Welcome to Plastic Model Mojo, a podcast dedicated to scale modeling, as well as the news and events around the hobby, where we hope to be informative and entertaining and help you keep your modeling mojo alive. All right, Dave, it's our lucky episode.
Double sevens.
Double sevens, man. 77.
Just seems like the other day we started doing this stuff.
Well, I think this time next year we'll have capped 100.
Yeah, the math works.
The math works.
All right.
Somebody else brought that to our attention in listener mail, I think.
Well, good.
Well, luck aside, Dave, what is up in your model sphere?
You know, I was thinking about that the other day driving in to the office. I had my favorite radio station on, FM 92.1, listening to my favorite morning DJs, Digger Dave and the Kaiser. And, you know, I thought to myself, that's a pretty darn good model sphere.
I think so, man.
If anybody doesn't know what I'm talking about, our friends over at On the Bench have joined in with getting a Facebook group together so that their listeners, they can interact with their listeners like we do on the dojo. It's called On Your Bench. So if you're on Facebook, go ahead and search it out. But my partner in crime, who has A, too much time on his hands, and B, has a wicked sense of humor, played a little prank on him, and they seemed to really enjoy it to the point where they made it the header for their Facebook group. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, go take a look. It's funny as all get out.
I think the penchant for satire came out.
Yes, it did. It leaps out of you every once in a while in unexpected ways.
And it doesn't seem to atrophy.
Mm-mm. No, they seem to enjoy it. That's the thing that I think was great, was that they really got a kick out of it.
Well, it didn't take me all that long. He had posted that photo before, and I said it looked like a cheeky radio morning show publicity shot or something. So I just kind of ran with it. And,
the only thing that you should have had is a little star in the corner that said, weather with Julian on the 11s. It was the only thing missing. And I only thought of it yesterday or the day before.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll consult you next time, Dave.
Thank you.
Well,
other than that, my model sphere is going well. I kind of know what you've been doing with your model sphere. Apparently, you've got so much spare time. You're mocking up stuff for the other podcasts.
Well, it may be their most interacted thread at this point.
It is so far. I'm pretty darn sure of that.
So, Digger Dave, you're welcome.
Yes, absolutely. and you are from now on Digger Dave. There's no question about it.
Well, what else? What's really in your model sphere?
Okay. Well, I'm torn. It's good and bad. One, it's, as you know, suddenly it turned cold here. We decided to go from
no crap.
We decided to go from very warm early fall directly to winter. We had our first snowfall here on Saturday.
Yeah, I want my $200 for pass and go.
Yeah, really. And so, that means there's less yard work to do, less stuff outside. Lord knows I don't have to take care of the pool in the winter, which should give me more time for modeling. Also, it's the time of year that I hate, where the sun rises later and sets earlier. Again, should give me more time for modeling. And I have been getting some in. But by the other hand, it also starts that run into Thanksgiving, then Christmas and the New Year. And that's always been death to my modeling. And so, I'm really trying to adjust to the change and hopefully I've got a good run going modeling wise right now. So I want to keep that run going. So what's your model sphere like other than playing in graphics programs?
Well, that was good practice.
It was.
Books, Dave, a flurry of books.
Oh, what kind of books?
Well, our buddy Rock Rozak over Detail and Scale has sent us some announcement details. So that's
Ooh.
going on in the model sphere. I had to check that out.
Okay.
Detail and Scale, A6 Intruder and U.S. Navy Attack Squadron Service. Now, this is volume 6 of their color and marking series.
Yeah, that's going to be real popular because I know there are a bunch of guys who love the A6. It's one of those things that's so ugly, it's beautiful. And number 2, there were so many great markings for the A6 squadrons.
Well, folks who think like that can go to www.detailandscale.com and pick up a digital or print version of this book. And looks good. I like the A6. I think it's pretty cool.
See, I told you. There are a lot of people who think
That's
that.
right. There's 3 books. Second one is Inside the Armor's Models for Ukraine, Volume 2. Now, Mr. Medding sent me an advanced digital copy for review. This book showcases 24 builds from a lot of, well, they're all outstanding modelers, bar none. They're all good.
Basically, the names you recognize if you're online modeling at all.
And if you didn't, you're going to probably go peruse the internet and find some more of their builds.
Yep.
These 24 builds draw from some of the 46 Ukrainian manufacturers that Mr. Meddings has denoted in the kind of the preface area of this book. 46, and one came to mind that he didn't have in there. So
every time I was DMing with him the other day, and he was saying that every time he publishes that little map of Ukraine with the logos of all the hobby companies, manufacturers, aftermarket folks, etc., every time he posts it, somebody contacts him and says, "You forgot X."
I understand. Back to my point, for historical scale models, and that ought to be obvious what that means, right?
Right.
I got to think that the Ukrainian manufacturers are second to like China Collective. And what I mean by China Collective is mainland
and
Hong Kong and Taiwan, all of that,
right.
Most of them are made in China, but they're, the design side and engineering's elsewhere.
Right.
But 46, I know of another one. So 47, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Sci-fi is just Japan, hands down, right?
Right.
But for historical scale models, that's a lot of companies. And I'm not talking about little resin cast garage companies. These are all pretty substantial, either kit manufacturers or contemporary aftermarket companies.
Right. Well, and that brings up an interesting question. Why? Do you think it was just, post breakup of the Soviet Union, there was a lot of skilled machinists, etc., and a lot of available space and machinery to begin that process?
Possibly, and you've got a lot of people who are in an open economy now, and they've got more money than they've ever had, so the people have hobbies.
Yeah.
And it's just probably a perfect storm of all that stuff. I really don't know, but
well, and my understanding from I've met a few people from Ukraine or Ukrainian heritage, etc. They seem to be very entrepreneurial. Just as a people, it seems ingrained in their culture to always wanting to develop a business, do business, etc. And man, I'll tell you what, I'm hard pressed to think of companies out of the Ukraine that I don't love their stuff.
Well, if you're interested in this book, you're going to get 119 full color pages showing all these really fabulous builds, to be honest. Like the predecessor book, the volume 1, should really satisfy the curiosity about the quality and the buildability of some of these brands. If you haven't ventured there yet. fabulous builds. I would say the average modeler is going to learn at least one new thing from every article or section contained within this book, and the one prior. I mean,
that'll make it worth it. I mean, that is the thing, that when you read quote unquote modeling books, to me, whether the book, some modeling books can just be pretty picture books, but you don't really learn anything. What I love is the type of book like what you're describing, where each time you read a section on a particular model, there's at least one technique that you've never thought of that you go, I got to make a note on that and try that next time.
Well, if this sounds interesting to you, and I recommend the book, I mean, there's just a lot of stuff in there. I love perusing it, and I learned, like I said, I wouldn't say it if I didn't mean it. I learned something from every one of the little installments. All 24 of them have something to teach.
And not only that, keep in mind the proceeds from the purchase are going to help the Ukrainians. And given what we've seen in the last 8 months, these guys and gals are committed to fighting for freedom, the freedom and integrity of their country. And, that's a lot. And any way we can support them, particularly on the side of providing help to the civilian population.
So InsideTheArmor.com, check it out. And that's armor spelled with a U, as everybody else in the world but us spells.
Armor with a U, like color.
That's right. Probably a few more words that we don't know, but those are the two we as modelers run into quite often.
Yep.
One more book, Dave.
Okay.
Mike Mikowski, our past guest for Real Space topic.
Yes. Space
in Miniature, SIM, his tech reports. He's published a new one.
On what?
6th installment, digital publication only. $10 at spaceinminiature.com. That's spaceinminiature, one word.com. This is a detailed review of the Atlantis reissue of the old monogram U.S. Space Missiles Kit.
Oh, that's fantastic.
52 pages, 122 illustrations. And I got a note here to read paragraph 3 from his email. Mike tells us that the Sim Tech Report is based on a 2-part kit review originally published in 1984 in Plastic Novelty Items, which is a publication of the Chicago Spruce Stretchers IPMS chapter. They're still around? They still around?
Yes, the Spruce Stretchers are still around.
They included descriptions of most of the 36 missiles, and it was a heavily illustrated with detailed drawings. The review covered the 1983 Heritage Edition. The original text was by Joe Suzinski, and the drawings were by Jim Griffiths. And after Joe passed away some years ago, Mike contacted Jim, made arrangements to use their work for some future work. Well, that time has come. So the Sim version adds photos of all the missiles and up-to-date drawings by model rocketry guru Peter Alway and Brian Nicholas of the Air and Space Museum, Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum, and author of his own books on U.S. missiles, also contributed to this book. So if you like real space, spaceinminiature.com. I checked this one over too, Dave. Well worth $10, man. I've spent $10 on a whole lot less than this.
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't know about you, Mike, but when I was younger, in the late 60s, early 70s, the heyday of the space program, I like every kid, I wanted to be an astronaut. I devoured anything I could find on the space program. And I remember when that kit came out, and I remember building it. And I'm telling you what, that modeling can be an inspiration. And that at the time was definitely in my wheelhouse for inspiration. So I'm sure since that kit's available again through Atlantis, I am sure that it's definitely going to be of interest to folks who are building that.
You might have gathered my model sphere has been checking out information and books from 3 different book providers.
Well, listen, there's worse ways to spend your model sphere or modeling adjacent time. Books are, again, my wife jokes that I'm a librarian who has models on the side, but, it's one of my preferred things to do when I'm not actually at the bench modeling. So, Mike, I assume you have a modeling fluid in front of you.
I do, and it's a new one.
Oh, good. Mine's new, too.
Well, I am trying for the first time Russell's Reserve 10-year Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey.
I don't think I've heard of that one.
It's good.
Is it?
We'll get a little more into the nitty gritty at the end, Dave.
Okay. Well, I don't like to repeat modeling fluids, so I try not to. I am having a highball, which I've had before. Again, a highball, Coke, and bourbon, or Coke,
ginger ale and bourbon, or Sprite
Coke,
and bourbon.
or Coke and whiskey. Coke and whiskey is also a highball.
Whiskey and something else.
Yes, but the bourbon is Trader Joe's bourbon.
Oh, you went there.
Well, there's a story behind it. The model wife retired from Southwest Airlines, 25 years as a flight attendant for Southwest. And frankly, post-COVID, flying was not the same experience as it was pre-COVID. And that pushed her over the edge as far as deciding she'd put her time in. So recently, she's gotten a job working for Trader Joe's. And most Trader Joe's have a liquor store attached to them, much like Kroger's do. And she gets a 20% discount. And she says to me, do you know they've got a branded bourbon? And from what I understand, it's from Buffalo Trace Distillery. Okay, bring it home. And so I get 750 milliliters of Buffalo Trace bourbon for like $11.95.
We have to do a straight up side by side shot glass neat taste test.
I will tell you, I have had this neat just to taste it. It is not Buffalo Trace quality. It's not the same quality.
It's probably like 4 years old.
Yeah, you can tell from the color it is. It's 90 proof. Color looks like it's about 4 years old, but I wouldn't drink it. I wouldn't drink it straight or on the rocks as a matter of course. But as far as being a highball mixer, great stuff. I'm sure I'm going to enjoy this by the end of the episode. So we'll have more when we get there.
Well, Dave, it's time for my favorite part of this episode.
All right. Sounds like we got some listener mail.
We sure did. First up, David Poles from Ithaca, New York. Dave is slowly doing Aircraft of the Pacific campaign of World War II. And he would like to do a Vault OS 2U Kingfisher in 72nd or 48th scale, prefers 72nd, but we'll build whatever kit is the best or the better kit. Life's too short for, as we know. Well, you and he know.
Yeah,
I think the journey is more important than the destination. So life's never too short. So
yeah, well, you like building old kits, man. You're some weird.
All right. Any recommendations for a kit? Well, let's cut to the chase on the 48 scale. He's got one option.
Yes, I was going to say.
You can build any of the incarnations of the old monogram Kingfisher from about 1960 something all the way up till yesterday, and either in a monogram box or a Revell box. That's it in 48 scale.
It is, and it's an old kit, but it's not a bad kit.
It's just the only game in town.
It is, but there's plenty of aftermarket for it. I wouldn't be it'll build up to a really nice kit. Now, compared to modern standards, it's not going to be up to modern standards as for engineering and stuff like that. The fit's going to be a little more difficult. You're going to have to take a little more time, et cetera, et cetera. But it's not unconquerable.
I think that was ripe. That was ripe for a refresh somewhere.
I agree. The only problem is that the Kingfisher's just not sexy. It's not like a P-51. You're not going to sell the living heck out of them.
Yeah, that's probably true. Somebody will do it.
Yeah,
they're doing dumber stuff in 48 scale.
Well, not just 48 scale. Hell, we get Nazi flying saucers in 3 different scales. I mean, yeah. But enough about that. So that's 48 scale. Now, he didn't mention it, but if you want to go up to 32nd scale, you have the Kitty Hawk kit, which, while they're out of production, are still available.
Yeah.
Now, this is one of the more challenging Kitty Hawk kits. It is not a drop the glue in, shake the box, and a Kingfisher rolls out. But as we've seen, Ed, among others, has shown us, it can be built up to a beautiful model.
Ed Baroth's Kingfisher was really nice.
Yes, stunning. So, not that it can't be done. It's just, even though it's a more modern kit, it's still challenging. 72nd scale.
You got bookends. You got 4 options.
Right. Go ahead.
You got a Lindbergh kit. It's older than you.
Right. I don't think I would consider that.
You've got an Airfix kit.
That also may be older than you. The original mold.
Oh, I'm sure. There's some aftermarket specific for that kit.
Yes.
From White Ensign. Is that right?
White Ensign makes some, and then Starfighter might make some too.
I don't know if they do or not. I would have bought it.
Maybe.
I don't remember buying it.
Okay.
But no, you may be right. No, I'll have to look. But I think you're correct, and I'm wrong.
Okay.
You have the newer 72nd scale kit from Octopus,
right?
Which is not. It's a limited run kit, short run kit out of Eastern Europe. It's probably
and was one of their early kits. So not only is it short run, it's at the beginning of their learning curve.
So I don't know how that compares to the 2 prior kits we mentioned, but the most recent release kit is the AZ Models kit in 72nd scale, and they've got about 4 different boxings of that kit. Yeah. That's the one I've got.
And to be honest with you, I think if I was going to recommend to the listener, I'd go with the AZ kit. Yeah, AZ is not Arma, it's not Tamiya, but they can be built up. They're good kits, and that's a fairly modern release for them. So, if you set those choices in front of me, I'm going to grab the AZ box, I think 9 times out of 10. I may also get the aftermarket for the Airfix kit.
Yeah, that's what I've done.
And see what's applicable, because I imagine a lot of it can be ported over to the newer AZ kit.
Yeah.
Whatever you do, don't build a Kingfisher on wheels. It's the ugliest airplane on the planet. Please don't do that. But other than that, if you go 72nd scale, go with the AZ kit.
I may have one of those in my stash at least.
As long as you don't have a Lindbergh one in your stash.
I do not, but I've built that kit as a kid. I did. I got it at the USS North Carolina gift shop.
I may have gotten it at the USS Alabama gift shop.
Anthony Faust wants to thank us for putting the word out about cams. The club appreciated that. So,
well, good.
Hey, we're promoting the hobby, and if you guys got a new club and want to get the word out, there you go. Hopefully it'll reach some more people in your area.
Right.
Maybe. I don't know. I hope so.
And if you don't have a club around you and want to see about forming one, reach out to me. I'll put you in touch with the folks at IPMS USA, here in the States at least. And they've got ways to assist you in finding modelers in your area and forming a club.
Zach Peace from Mansfield Center, Connecticut,
who has been posting on the dojo some really nice stuff.
Mansfield, actually. I don't know where I put it, why I put an I in there. Sorry, Zach. Great show this week, guys. That would be the last episode. Evan makes me feel old. Well, get on the bus, Zach.
Oh, yeah, really. Step in line behind me, buddy. I'm telling you what, I love his youthful energy. And then next thing I know, he's shivving me in the back.
It's like 2.5 Men.
Yes, exactly.
We have to nickname him Short Round.
There you go.
Now he's got 2 movies to go, a TV show and a movie to go check out.
Yeah.
Well, he appreciated, I guess it was Evans on the Wheel of Doom at that point. We're probably going to rename it, but the possibility of a yawn moving to a fave. Actually, Evans suggested the opposite of that. It was a fave becoming a yawn.
Right.
But this is the opposite, which is, would be a good topic as well.
Yeah.
Zach's been outspoken about his disdain for the F-35.
He's not the only one.
Now, I think I know, because he mentions it here, and I've heard this from at least four. I've either heard it through conversations I've been involved in, or just seen it in passing on the internet. Right? Mm-hmm. It's the forward opening canopy.
Yeah.
Didn't the Colonial Vipers in Battlestar Galactica open forward like that?
Yes, I believe they
I know
did.
the toys did. I don't know if the TV show did or not, but
I think the original TV show did indeed.
And he doesn't like the aircraft. It replaced the Harrier and some of the other aircraft the Navy was using that he thought were more interesting. But, sure. Tamiya's recent releases turned him on because it's Tamiya.
Yeah,
and that kit, just when you think they can't do it any better, they do it better.
Yes, it's absolutely true. Absolutely true. I will tell you once again, I'll repeat myself for the millionth time. The 72nd scale Tamiya Zero, finest model kit I've ever built in my life. Just the engineering was so well thought out. The assembly was freaking perfect. Every piece, not only did every piece fit and fit perfectly, but it was clearly designed so that you couldn't make many of the mistakes modelers normally make by not paying attention to the instructions.
Zach is a gut punch, I guess, because it's amazing to me a quality. And he can build it as a Vermont Air National Guard aircraft, which fits his New England-based aircraft collection. So there you go, Zach. You get to cross the bounds of scale and genre.
I'm gonna, eventually, I'm gonna break down and probably buy. I do not currently have an F-35 in my collection or in my inventory or stash. I am sure that probably by the next year or two, I will probably have one version in 72nd scale of the A, the B, and the C. It's inevitable.
I wonder, I won't make a blanket statement, but I have to wonder if the low-vis schemes of, current fashion in the Navy have contributed to this lack of interest like this of new aircraft.
Yes, absolutely. There is no question the fact that low vis schemes, particularly for the Navy, the high visibility, beautiful schemes of the 70s and 80s,
60s,
and the 60s, Vietnam forward to the changeover to low vis, they're visually beautiful and colorful and bright. I think that's, talk to the geeks. I'm sure that they're going to tell you that in addition to it just being their area because they were all in the service and all, that those particular aircraft are stuff they like because of the markings.
Well, it's kind of paradoxical because you could argue in the 60s and 70s that camouflage mattered.
Right.
And now here we are in the second decade of the 21st century where a satellite helps you reach out and touch someone, whether you can see them or not. That camouflage doesn't matter.
Right. That they're taking shots from 150 miles away.
So you had low-vis schemes when intuition would say camouflage mattered. Now you have low-vis schemes. I think I got that wrong.
Right.
But you got low-vis schemes where camouflage is not so important anymore.
Yep.
Wonder why. Some of those fighters in the Jolly Rogers and Sundowners of the 60s and 70s, that'd be sweet.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Oh, our West Coast friend Mark Doremus was actually the person going to Australia.
Yes.
Who had been to Thailand. And unfortunately, our recommendations dropped after he was already traveling. So,
okay.
So we can get a little stale, I guess. 2 weeks, 2-week cycle. No surprise there.
Right. So we're going to once a week starting now, right?
No, we're not.
Okay.
Let me be clear. No, we're not.
I just wanted to give him a heart attack, folks.
Well, he wasn't able to get to the North Beaches, but he did make it to Hobby Co. at Queens Victoria building.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, wow, what a store. 30 feet of shelving dedicated to aircraft, another 20 to armor, another 30 to cars. Ships were 15 to 20 feet. And Gundam and Gunpla had a 40 feet wall to ceiling or floor to ceiling. A lot of stuff.
Nice.
A lot of stuff.
Good.
Well, I'm glad that worked out for him.
Yes.
And
there's nothing better than if you're traveling for work or for vacation and finding a hobby shop and it turns out to be a really good one.
And he did end up with an Italeri F-35A. Is that a Hassi Reeboks, maybe? He was wondering. Or is it all Italeri all the time?
Italeri Reeboks with Tamiya.
That's what I thought.
It might be a Tamiya kit in an Italeri box, but it also
it's
might
older.
be
It's too old to be a Tamiya kit.
Okay, so then what it is it's the Italeri kit, and Tamiya now reboxes it.
No, the Tamiya kit's all new. He said Hassi imprints his Italeri ? So I guess he's got a Hassi F-35A?
Hassi F-35.
Okay. So is that the Italeri kit?
No, I do not believe it is.
Okay, but apparently the Aussie distributor includes an RAAF insignia and serial number sheet.
Nice.
So you got a nice souvenir.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, Mark, glad it worked out. Glad you found a cool shop on the travel scene. That's always fun.
And guys, if you're out and about and you do that, if you're traveling, whatever, and you come across we all go. First thing we all do is when we get to a new town for work or for vacation.
Used to flip out the phone book out of the hotel drawer.
Yes, hotel drawer. We don't do that. God, we're old. We don't do that anymore. You pull up Google and you Google looking for hobby shops. If you go, take pictures and post them on the dojo so that it's a nice archive so other folks can who may be venturing into that same town may know what they're getting into and if they want to make the trip. But it's also a great way for us to all live vicariously through you. So if you find a hobby shop in a town, post photos.
Dave Kinsey from Ipswich, Massachusetts. Dave.
Yep.
Got
up in the north.
Got a tip.
All right.
So he's building a Trumpeter's 16th scale Panzer IV. And if you've been following Dave Parker's 4-year build of that sucker on the FE modeler, you would not even buy that damn kit.
Yes.
Well, anyway,
I know exactly what you're talking about.
They make all their 3D printed stuff available that was used in that build available through FE modeler, including the 3D printed casting numbers and marks that go on the bogies.
Right.
I mean, 16 scale, right? You're splitting hairs now.
Oh, yeah. Your 16th scale, that stuff's noticeable.
Oh, yeah. So he was using these and trying to shave them off the base of resin. They're just shattering because it was so brittle. So he immersed the resin base in the hot water for a few minutes to soften it up, and they shave right off. So there you go. Some 3D printed stuff you can soften up, but I'm going to give you a caveat right now. That doesn't work with all resins.
Right. Well, that is one thing with 3D printing that I think probably there's somebody out there, you or somebody else who's deep into 3D printing, Will, whoever, who needs to sit down and go through the different resins and talk about what their qualities are and what good for what applications, because this isn't like paint. Well, maybe it is a little like paint because there's so many different paints and paint lines and uses for some paints but not others. But that's clearly true of resin. It's not one type of resin that that is used for everything. And I think that folks who are getting into their new 3D printing hobby, yes, that's a little bit of a poke.
Who? Not me.
Not you, because you don't want another hobby.
I don't have a 3D printer.
Excuse me? Yes, you do. Again, I think you're going to see a lot of discussion in the next year or two centered around, okay, here are the resins from these different companies, and they can be used in these different printers, and here's what works for this or that or the other thing. And I think that's just going to be a flood of information over the next couple of years.
Up next from IPMS Seattle, Martin Pieta.
Okay.
I thought Jim was your friends, guys. He wants to give you dank dust. I would not give that stuff to my worst enemy unless they like the taste of blankety blank bong water. I guess this gets in the all wheat versus weed beer.
Yes. Yep.
Short is we've got an open invitation to come out there to the Museum of Flight and the IPMS Spring Show out there and go to Woodinville Whiskey. They're a rye maker, and craft beers are a dime a dozen out there. I'm sure they're ranged from crap to awesome. Someday, Dave, you're going to get out there before me for sure.
Yeah, I got to get out there. I've been promising him for quite a while.
Well, thanks for the warning, Martin. We'll avoid the dank dust.
Yes, that's right.
I would probably avoid it by the name alone. Well, I've answered this one via email, but Adam Coleman, our friend from Texas, he is making a tour up this way. I don't know why. He didn't allude to why, but he's going to be coming up from Bowling Green, Louisville, up to Cincinnati, back down through Frankfort, Lexington area, Bardstown, and back down to Bowling Green kind of circuit.
Yep.
Wanted to know if there's any hobby shops he needed to hit while he's on the way, and you know what I told him, Dave.
Oh, Scale Reproductions, man. He's got to go there. It's one of the better hobby shops you'll find. Brian's a friend, but just in all seriousness, the level of kits, paints, and aftermarket supplies are really impressive for a hobby shop these days.
We've talked about Brian's, and I don't know what's in Cincinnati at this point.
Yeah, Boardwalk closed. Boardwalk was the one that I always went to when I was up in Cincinnati, but they finally closed. So
if any of the Cincinnati folks know what's worthwhile in Cincinnati, shoot us a note. It's too late for Adam, but we'd like to know because we're kind of close.
Sure.
And like I said, I answered him via email already, but Adam, hope you're listening to this on your road trip. Scale Reproductions, can't go wrong. You're welcome, Brian.
That's right.
Well, since all these podcasts, us included, dominate the English-speaking world, Dave, we've got an email from the United Kingdom.
Okay.
Scott Daniel. Interesting. He was also, last couple episodes, overlapped his travel to the United States. And he was in Cincinnati for a couple weeks. I guess he's back in the UK now. While listening to your podcast on a riverfront walk in downtown Cincinnati, well, he used the word Cincy. Good on him.
Yeah, good on him. That's right. It's Cincy.
Dave mentioned his modeling fluid in episode 76 is the Hefeweizen from Hofbrauhaus.
In Newport.
That's right.
Did he walk across the river and get some?
Well, I don't know if he walked, but he definitely went over there.
Well, there's a walking bridge now directly.
He thought it'd be criminal if he did not.
Oh, he's right.
So he went to the Hofbrauhaus and enjoyed this excellent modeling fluid. Thank you very much.
All right. That does my heart good.
You can get one of those T-shirts now, Dave. It says influencer.
There you go. Better than the one that says alcoholic.
Oh, that's funny because I know better.
Yeah, I know.
While he was in Cincinnati, he also took in the United States Air Force Museum in Dayton, Ohio.
Good. I was going to say I hope that he'd got up there because, it's not in Cincinnati, it's in Dayton, but it's such a close. I mean, it's 45 minutes.
It's less than an hour. I mean,
yeah.
You could leave Cincinnati early. You could target the opening time, leave Cincinnati, grab some breakfast on the way, and you'd be there before you know it.
Yep, absolutely. And that's a once-in-a-lifetime museum.
If you don't live in the United States.
Yeah.
Well, as close as we do.
Yeah, true enough.
We make it every so often.
Yes. In fact, I was up there.
I know.
Thursday, but I did not because of other complications. I didn't get to go by.
Well, we know a guy.
Yeah, that's right.
So we're going to take him up on taking that in sometime. Yep. Maybe even after hours. Yep. That'd be nice.
That would be cool.
Well, Scott also took in MTS Aviation Models in Beaver Creek.
Okay.
I don't know. It's got to be near Dayton.
Beaver Creek is near Dayton.
And he might have been the first Brit to ever walk in that place. But they helped him find something that would fit in his suitcase. So he ended up with an Academy P-51. So
good.
There you go, Scott. Thanks for visiting.
Yeah.
I hope the work was not too terrible that brought you over here. And glad you got to go to the museum. Glad you got to go to Hofbrauhaus.
And Ivan, take note. He bought what fit in his suitcase, not what he had to mail back to the United Kingdom.
VAT.
That's right.
Yeah, you know me. Mr. Karnalka from New York City.
Oh, it's time for our question.
Well, he's got a couple.
Okay. Well, pick one.
And Mike, I'm going to save the more in-depth one because it's not only is it a good question for listener mail, it's a good topic for possible enhanced consideration. Let's just say that. So, second option. With Thanksgiving fast approaching, and it is, what are you most thankful for regarding the hobby, kit releases, community, etc.?
That's easy for me.
Oh, you start then, because we got the same answer. Go for it.
Yeah, I know we do. The community that rose up around this podcast. Mike and I started this. Honest to God, I've said it more than it bears repeating. We didn't know what we were doing. We didn't know if anybody listened. We were doing it to motivate ourselves to get more modeling done, which, by the way, it has. I know it doesn't always seem it, but yes, it has actually gotten us building more and finishing more. But the community that grew up around it, especially once COVID hit, I'll tell you, there is nothing better than going to shows and interacting with folks who listen, I spend, honestly, 30, 40 minutes a day minimum interacting with other modelers on Twitter, Facebook, email, whatever. Just so happens last Friday, Mike and I were on a Zoom type call with Evan, Ian, and Chris.
All in Ottawa, Canada, by the way. Don't leave that detail out.
Yeah, that's right. People we see once a year if we're
ever
lucky in person. Yeah,
now we've only seen Evan. Now we see him on the video, but in person we've only met Evan. And to add, we would not have met those people had it not been for the podcast and the internet making it all possible.
Exactly. And again, it just that so changes every aspect of modeling. The best part of modeling, again, sound like a broken clock. Best part of modeling isn't modeling. Best part of modeling is the people in modeling. There's nothing better on a Friday night. We're all sitting around on a Zoom call and we're interacting, joking, having a great time. I mean, side-splittingly funny time while actually working on models all in our own model rooms.
Or trying to, at least.
Trying to, yes. Sometimes the one downside when we're doing something like that is sometimes there's more BS than there is modeling, but even that, it's enjoyable. So, yeah, and I'm sure your answer's the same.
It is the same. It's surprising. It really is. We had no freaking clue, man.
Dumbfounded,
and I think it would have happened anyway, but the COVID pandemic certainly put the fast forward on that propagation of the community, because so many people were cloistered and isolated. Yeah. And not just the listening audience, but the other podcasts. It's just been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun, and we have a lot of fun with everyone out there, and that's what it is. That's what I'm most thankful for. I mean, because for me, all this and the community, like Dave said, yes, we are getting more modeling done. Since we started Plastic Model Mojo, I've finished. This is shameful because so many people have finished so many more. But it's good for me. You got to shift over to, you got to walk a mile in my shoes, not yours. I've finished 4 models, and I've got 2 others started. One of them is real close, which is 4 plus the other almost finished one. 5 is 5 more than I finished in the better part of a decade rolling into this podcast. So our original reason to start this has played out. We've gotten so much more than that. It's immeasurable. It really is. And it's maybe to some of you folks, this sounds cheesy, but it's the truth. It's the simple truth that the community that's come up around our podcast and all the others, and the community that the collective of all the podcasts and all their communities, it's amazing. It's just been absolutely amazing. And I couldn't be more thankful for it.
Nothing warmed my heart more than at the last 2 national conventions, modelers coming up to me who this was their first national convention, and they walk up with their eyes the size of saucers and grinning ear to ear, can't stop it grinning, walking up and telling me, you didn't oversell it. This is amazing. I've never seen anything like, and that enthusiasm you get from your first national convention, that alone has brought more joy into my hobby and is inspirational to me. And I can't wait for San Marcos.
Well, Dave, on the email side, that is it for listener mail. What have you got, my friend?
Well, we've got a number of them, but I'm just going to pick a couple out. One, after our last Wheel of Doom episode, listener John McAvoy reached out and suggested, and I don't want to talk about it here, but you need to make a note to add this to the next Wheel of Doom or whatever we're going to call.
We're gonna play it close to the vest.
You don't want me to tell you what the question was?
No, I don't.
Okay. All right. But John, you had a really great question, and I thank you for it, and I can guarantee you it will appear on the next wheel.
Some of these other jokers might make it a topic.
Oh, yeah, that's true enough. Yeah, now we have to worry about industrial espionage. Paul Toutant reached out. He's the person who previously commented on the fact that I could pronounce his last name properly. Take that, Dave Goldfinch. I'm sorry, Digger Dave. But he reached out again to point out that he had located, and I swear to you, he sent me a picture of the bottle. This is not a joke. D's Nuts peanut butter whiskey. And he tells me, in all seriousness, it's really good. It's made by a local distillery in Calgary, and he's offered to get me some. So, Paul, I'm amazed, given my experience with the Scatterbrain and what it tasted like. The fact that you found this, you were brave enough to try it, and you say it's not bad. I'm impressed on all counts. So
I would leave it at that.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, I'm clearly never going to live down the peanut butter whiskey episode.
Probably not,
which is okay. And then Travis Derby reached out. He's been listening to the podcast, and he was asking about aftermarket decals.
Which you're an expert.
Well, no, I am not an expert. I own
a sucker.
Yes, I was going to say, I own a lot of them. That is completely different than expert. And talking about the different aftermarket decal manufacturers for German World War II 48 72nd scale aircraft and then 35th scale armor. You and I both reached out to him, talked about, ordering from Hanitz or ordering from...
Oh, yeah. I remember now.
The BNA.
Or straight up.
Right. Going directly to the manufacturers, and you named a couple of the armor manufacturers, and I gave him some information on some aircraft manufacturers. It's really neat to see people getting back into the hobby and taking the next step to try, okay, I don't just have to build the kit with the decals that come in it. And depending on the manufacturer, sometimes those decals are crap. But, it's nice to see somebody who's getting into the hobby or getting back into the hobby starting to look for these different things. And, if you're in that position, reach, and you want our input, reach out, just DM us or email us. I'm not any sort of expert. I own a lot of decals. I'm not any sort of expert, but I'll be happy to tell you what I know. And, that's how we all get better. And it's part of the plan for getting better, is sharing information. So, Travis, I appreciate you reaching out.
All right, man. Is that all you got?
That's it.
Let's bump on out of here.
You got it. Well, this is the point in the podcast where I ask you, if you would, when you're done with this podcast, please go rate the podcast, give it 5 stars on whatever podcast app you use to listen to us. Subscribe if you have not subscribed. Also, please tell one of your modeling friends who doesn't listen to podcasts, and there are those folks out there, because we're continuing to gain listeners. One of the ways we do it is by current listeners going out and telling their modeling friends, hey, I enjoy listening to this. You might too, and you may have to show them how to access the podcast. We'd appreciate if you do it.
Well, after you're done rating the podcast, cruise on over to www.modelpodcast.com. This is a consortium website set up with the help of Stuart Clark from Scale Model Podcast. There you're going to find banner links to all the other podcasts who have chosen to participate with us in this spirit of cross-promotion. And check it out. You'll find them all there. In addition to the other podcasts, we've got a lot of blog and YouTube friends out there in the model sphere. First up, Jim Bates of Scale Canadian TV. You're going to want to check out his YouTube channel. And, Jim's had a tough weekend. He was at the Wings Over Dallas air show.
Yep.
And dealing with witnessing that pretty epic tragedy there.
Yep. It was tough. Our thoughts are with you, man.
And not just with Jim, with everybody affected by the loss of all the crew members on those two aircraft.
Yep.
Also, check out Chris Wallace, Model Airplane Maker. Great blog and YouTube channel. Chris is, again, I think we pitched it last time, but the SR-71, painting black without using black. It's a pretty good skill, Dave.
Yeah. It's gotten just massive tons of views, and he tells us that basically it doubled the number of subscribers to his YouTube channel. And I'm happy to hear that, because Chris does really, really good YouTube videos. And frankly, I wish he'd do more of them.
Stephen Lee, Sprue Pie with Frets, long and short form blog there. He's got all kinds of things going on all the time.
Yep.
Check it out. Jeff Groves, Inch High Guy, all things 72nd scale.
Finally, once you've done viewing all of those YouTube channels and reading all of those blogs, if you're not a member of your national IPMS organization, that's IPMS USA, IPMS Canada, IPMS Israel, IPMS wherever you happen to live. If you are not a member of your national organization, please join. The national organizations communicate with each other. They do a lot of good in coordinating modeling activity inside their countries, making sure that contests don't step all over each other. They are also contacted all the time by manufacturers seeking help and input. It's your chance to make your voice heard, and it's well worth the small amount that you pay as a yearly membership. So join IPMS USA, IPMS Canada, IPMS fill in the blank.
All right, Dave, let's have a word from our sponsor. Plastic Model Mojo is now brought to you by Model Paint Solutions, your source for Harder Steenbeck airbrushes, David Union power tools, and laboratory-grade mixing, measuring, and storage tools for use with all your model paints, be they acrylic, enamels, or lacquers. Check them out at www.modelpaintsolutions.com. Come and make it in Texas, Dave.
How much longer do I have to wait?
Dave, we are 262 days away from the IPMS National Convention in San Marcos, Texas.
That time is flying, buddy.
Well, we'll get through the holidays and New Year's in short order.
Yeah, and that's when it'll really start flying.
Be into February before you know it.
Yep.
Then it'll be spring, and then we'll be there.
Yep.
Special Agent 003 has yet another update.
All right. What else should we do while we're down in the great state of Texas?
Well, he wants to make sure folks who can put it in their travel or make a point to get there to please check out the Museum of the American GI.
Yes, that's a good one.
National attendees heading west to San Marcos, or east out of San Marcos, I guess. The Museum of the American GI makes a great stop, especially for armored geeks.
That's you.
This museum is in College Station, Texas, just 2 hours from San Marcos. So stop in at the Museum of American GI on a trip to or from the Nats. This museum has a lot of restored vehicles. That's the main focus of the museum. They are meticulously restored and they run. That's always a plus.
Yes.
Some of his favorites are the Renault FT17.
Oh, I love those.
M18 Hellcat, M50 Ontos, and the M8 gun motor carriage. And for boat guys, there's a Vietnam era PBR.
Oh, wow.
And a Cobra gunship.
Nice.
The museum also has other military artifacts on display, just a top-notch display of everything. A tour will not take all day, but it's worth a stop. So if you're coming into College Station, check it out. College Station is also the home of Texas A&M, the Aggies, and the George Bush Library. So there's a couple other potential stops if you want to check it out. If travelers are hungry, they need to stop into the Dixie Chicken for a burger and a beer.
Ooh, that sounds good.
A legendary establishment directly across the street from the campus, Texas A&M.
College dives or college dive eateries are some of the best.
It's a Texas institution, and he says to please be sure to check out the live rattlesnake in the cage out back.
I'm glad my wife is not coming with us.
Well, that's going to be the update for come and make it to Texas, Dave.
Well, I can't wait for that Nationals, man.
You got anything to say?
Actually, yeah. You and I have to sit down probably after the new year, after the holidays are done. You and I need to sit down with a map, and we need to actually plan out this trip. I mean, more meticulously than just you showing up, me throwing a cooler with beer and stuff in the back, and then just pointing the car west.
It's a little longer than normal.
And you and I need
to not fly.
Yeah. Right. So we need to sit down and plan what's on our way there, what's on our way back, what do we want to try and see, and it's going to be a little bit more than what we did for Omaha, which was literally point the car west.
It was.
So we'll have to do that after the first of the year.
All right. Well, let's move on to the Bench Time Halftime Report, Dave.
All right.
That is brought to us by Ed Tackett at TackettZ. TackettZ.com, the must-have tools for the model maker. Get on there and see what Ed's up to. And Dave, this time I got a draft email in the out mailbox.
Copy me on it.
I will. I'll copy on it. So we're gonna sort out that Flexi file storage container and hopefully make that a regular available product.
Yes, because I think that one would do very, very well.
So, Dave, what is on your bench?
Well, I am thrilled to report that while I have not made as much progress as I would like to, of course I never do, the Kate is fully in decals. She is decaled out. It only took 6 markings from 6 different decal sheets, but she has all of her decals on. Now it is a matter of putting a gloss coat on top, starting to weather the thing, or at least doing some panel lining and panel shading, then semi-gloss or semi-matte, then some more weathering. But it is clearly going to be done before the end of the year, and I'm thrilled. And I really like it. It's coming along great. Also, because you and everybody else on the planet seems to worry that I'm not going to get the P51 done for the Moosaroo, I have started the P51. I am on the way. I'm, of course, still working on the interior. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. This Arma kit is one of the finest pieces of molding and engineering that I think I have ever seen in a model kit. Now, it doesn't go together quite as easy as that Tamiya Zero, but it is not only unbelievably detailed, but you have to pay it. And I mentioned this previously. You have to pay attention to the instructions because they give you so many different options, and there are variations with each option in the interior that you have to pay very close attention to the instructions. And, a lot of model manufacturers, particularly in years past, they would have said, you know what, I don't care that the interior of one P-51B/C looked different than another one and would have just given you one interior and told you to use that for everything, even though it really wouldn't have been completely historically accurate. These guys have given you more options than you could wish for as far as this particular aircraft with this particular set of markings had this particular interior setup. This particular aircraft with these particular markings had a different interior setup. And they gave you the options for them all. And it's just, I continue to be super impressed by this kit. I will tell you that, and I'm not done. I'm just beginning the trip down the yellow brick road. But if this continues in this fashion, I am willing to say that it is equal to the Tamiya Zero in different ways as being pinnacles of 72nd scale aircraft modeling. It's just super impressive, and I'm enjoying the heck out of it. And that's about it for my modeling bench. How about yours?
Well, I'm shooting paint, man.
I know, painting again. And then what happened when you went to go paint?
I ran out of air. I'm a CO2 guy.
Yes.
So I got an errand to run tomorrow.
And doesn't it seem like that always happens? Well, I guess definitionally it does. You wouldn't notice you were out of air any time except when you went to go paint.
Well, this time I was painting some special paint for work on a work part and was wondering why I couldn't get above a certain PSI. And then I looked over and the other gauge was at 0.
Oh.
So I was like, uh-oh. So I ran out of CO2 during the middle of a job. Well, I got that job done. It was during the cleaning of my airbrush that became problematic.
Yeah.
So needless to say, the airbrush is now in a surplus baking dish at about an inch of lacquer thinner.
Gotcha.
Soaking away. So I've been working on the parts for the catapult to the E-16.
Yeah. You figured out how you're going to rig it.
Well, a while back. I've got notes in the notebook for that. So
gotcha.
That should go okay. So the catapult is the truss, this box truss. It's got this launch mechanism on the inside of it. It's like a separate subassembly. And then you got the launch trolley on the top. So you got the launch trolley, the truss, and this firing mechanism.
Yeah.
So I've been painting the firing mechanism and the launch trolley for starters. So
right.
Primed in Mr. Surfacer 1500 black. That went well, as always.
Oh, as always.
And then you take your eye off the ball and you run out of the basics.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to order some primer, some paint, some thinner from Sprue Brothers. All came in. So I've been painting the launch mechanism and the launch trolley and primed in black, shooting the basic battleship gray, I guess, the Curie Arsenal gray is what I'm using. And then a really light shade from a high angle after that. Just try to give some layer. Well, what I did was I shot the primer and then a light sky gray from Tamiya and then this almost pure white after that.
Gotcha.
And then I went back with a really dilute Curie Arsenal gray from Tamiya and sprayed the entire thing from every angle. Really, really light coat. So I've built up this layering and I've built up some false shadowing, and I even masked off some of the parts on the launch mechanism and painted those a lot lighter before I sprayed the battleship gray.
Right. So that they would pop out.
Yeah. So I really like how it turned out. And I used the Ushi van der Rosten photo as templates for the modeling. So A little bit, not too much. It wasn't an ideal part to use that on.
Right,
but,
because it's all thin rails and such.
Right. So I did use that a little bit, and it worked out pretty good. So, hopefully I'm going to port all this to the box truss of the catapult.
Right.
And then to the airplane proper.
Right.
So
now, let me ask you an interesting question from my perspective. Okay. Obviously, this is, if you want it to be, just a palette for weathering.
Yes.
Oil staining, oil streaking, rust, because again, you're at sea, salt water, the pistons and the greased cables, and, just a beautiful palette if you want to do that. Have you figured out how you are going to weather that launch piston mechanism with the two pulleys or wheels at the end? Are you going to weather it completely before you insert it into the box truss? Or are you going to try and insert it into the box truss, seal it up, and then weather it?
No, it's got to be done before it goes in.
Okay. That's what I figured, but...
And then all the inside of the box truss has to be done before I close it up.
Gotcha. That's a challenge.
It's a challenge. I'm learning how I might have done things differently.
Well, that brings up an interesting point. As I get to the end of this, Kate, I don't know if you have this feeling. Whenever I complete a model, one of the feelings that I have is, okay, I need to go build another one because now I know how I would do it and do it differently.
I would have to be really in love with the subject.
Me too. And I never do
that. But yeah, I understand that completely.
The MiG-17 is probably the only thing where I will do that. I'm not Barry Numeric, and I'm not a 109 machine or whatever. I may eventually do that with the MiG-17. And heck, I've built 2 of the Tamiya Zeros before, as well as one of the Hasegawa ones. So, and I can see more of those in my future.
Well, I'm going to keep chipping away at this. I've got everything's primed.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to weather these 2 things and see kind of where that goes, and then start on the truss, the main catapult body.
Gotcha.
And in addition, I've been printing a little tower for the catapult to sit on for kind of a temporary display base. So
right.
That's gone pretty well. So
you sent a picture of that today, and you're right. It looks really good. And I think that until you do the whole section of the ship where you're going to do that, I think that'll be a great way to display the completed catapult and model.
That's pretty much it, man.
All right. Well, it sounds, hey, we're both making progress, which again, that's the reason we started this whole podcast in the beginning. We're holding ourselves accountable.
Hello, Mojovians. This is Chris from Inside the Armour Publications, and I'm here to tell you all about Models for Ukraine Volume 2. The first volume of Models for Ukraine raised money for humanitarian aid for Ukraine by featuring only Ukrainian manufacturers made by some of the best modelers around the world. Why mess with a good formula? Volume 2 features much of the same. This time, though, all of the articles will be new and feature such great artists as Calvin Tan, Ken Abrams, Sam Dwyer, Rene van der Hart, Vance Lubin, Robert Blocker, and many more. All in all, 23 artists in 11 countries have donated their work for free to what we think is a fantastic modelling book that also happens to raise a lot of money for a good cause. If you'd like to purchase this fantastic book, please head on over to InsideTheArmour.com to get yours today. Also, if you'd like to know more about the model manufacturers of Ukraine, please look up Models from Ukraine podcast to hear the latest interviews with people like ResKit, Wingsy Kits, Armory, and many of the other Ukrainian manufacturers. A special thank you to Mike and Dave. Raise your glass of modelling fluid, and let's get back to the plastic model mojo.
All right, Dave, it's time for our special segment. Let's be clear.
All right, let's talk to the doctor.
Dave, as we promised in our November 12-minute model sphere, we're into our second episode of November, and we have with us tonight, once again, Dr. Strangebrush, John Miller.
Yay!
Yowza, yowza, yowza.
What is up, good doctor?
Well, a little this, little that, strikes and gutters. What can I say?
That's a good analogy.
It's a Big Lebowski analogy for all the Big Lebowskians out there.
You need to show up to Lebowski Fest in Louisville one year. They hold it every year here.
Have you guys seen that movie?
Yes.
Oh God, yeah.
Okay. All right.
Well, tonight's topic du jour is let's be clear. And we're going to talk a little bit about canopy and clear parts and some strategies there to get the most out of that make or break aspect of a lot of models, not just airplanes, but hopefully some of this is applicable to maybe cars.
Yes, it is. A lot of it's applicable. Actually, any model with a clear part, a window or canopy of some kind. Hopefully, you'll find some tips that you might find helpful there at the bench when dealing with those parts. So, if you want to just jump, go ahead.
Mike said something there in the intro that I think is absolutely 100% correct. Make or break.
Yes.
I am convinced that if you're walking down at a contest down a line of models, the aircraft models, you're walking down a line of table, the first thing you notice is whether or not the canopies are clear and the framing is sharp.
Don't forget, David, the canopy is the window to the soul.
Oh my God. It's Jack Handy's deep thoughts.
It's going to be one of those nights.
It's going to be one of those nights. All right.
Well, I've said before, I have a canopy fetish. I'm man enough to admit it.
Okay.
There's nothing that gets me more randy than a well executed canopy. And I can tell you, having judged IPMS regional, the Seattle IPMS regional show, you can indulge in what I call drive-by judging.
Yeah.
If you can go by a kit that's beautifully executed, and if there is a fog or even worse, a gluey thumbprint in the clear portions of that canopy, you can just walk on to the next model.
Yeah, I think a lot of judges do.
Yeah. And, not to mention the fact, even if you're not a modeler, if you're someone just walking up to a table of models for the first time, your eye, I think, is naturally drawn to all those cool things on the other side of that clear plastic, whether it's a car model or an aircraft model. You want to see into the cockpit. You want to see the controls. You want to see the instrument panel. And all of that stuff has to be viewed through the lens, if you will, of whatever job you did on that clear portion of the canopy or the windscreen. So it's important. It's the focal part of the model, in my opinion.
Well, the first step in canopies is getting it off that dang sprue gate, which is utterly different than how you treat regular plastic styrene parts.
I couldn't agree more. And one of the things that you probably want to think about not using when removing a clear part from the sprue is an X-Acto blade, or even worse, a parts cutter, a nipper.
Right.
That's a good way to induce a crack or even a craze within the plastic that you're just not going to be able to deal with. What I like to use, and you can get them practically anywhere online these days, is I like to use a photo etch saw.
Yes.
You can get these little micro saws that have really fine teeth. You can get the ones that have aggressive teeth. You don't want those. Get the kind with a really fine teeth. And that's what I use to remove all of my clear parts from the sprue is a photo etch saw.
Okay. Do you take your saw and do you try and get as close to the canopy as possible, or do you cut slightly back from the edge of the canopy to, when you saw through, and then work with a sanding stick or something else to eliminate that last little bit?
Yeah, so there's actually an article on my site about polishing clear parts to clarity, right?
That's Model Paint Solutions.
That's modelpaintsolutions.com.
There you go.
And if you go up to the right-hand corner of the homepage, it'll say the paint booth, and you can go there to the paint booth, and all the articles are there on the site. A page for the paint booth, or you can simply do Model Paint Solutions polishing canopies as a URL search, and it'll pop right up. And in there, I show a 1/72 ME109 canopy being removed by a photo etch saw, and I put the saw parallel to the canopy frame and as close to it as I can get.
Okay.
So that as little of that nubbin of the stub is left once the canopy is removed. And then to take care of the residual stub, I like to go to alpha abrasive 600 or 100 grit paper.
You mean 1,000?
Excuse me, 1,000. 600 or 1,000. 100. 600 or
100 would be ugly.
Yeah, that would be really ugly. 600 or 1,000, and I use it, with soapy water. And what I'll do is I'll fold it into a square of about, an inch or so, inch square. And then I'll hold it in my hand so that the abrasive surface that I'm using is rounded, kind of like, a sphere.
Yeah.
So I will use that rounded portion that I'm holding on that folded abrasive, and I'll just rub that, that nubbin right down so that it's flush with the frame. What you may want to do, just in case, you're not that handy with using sandpaper that close to a clear part, take a minute and use some Tamiya tape. Or we also have some pretty heavy-duty clear scribing tape on the site that can also be used to cover the clear portion of the canopy. So just in case you make a mistake, you won't end up scratching a clear panel on that canopy.
Yeah, all you end up scratching is a piece of tape, and you don't care about that.
Exactly right. Exactly right. So yeah. So again, just quick review. Photo etch to remove the part once the part's off. 600 or 1,000 grit alpha with soapy cold water. Round it up into a folded piece of abrasive, and just knock the nubbin down and cover the clear part with tape, and that should pretty much get the part off the sprue and ready for dipping or buffing and sanding out if you have scratches.
That's where I was going next. We've got our part off the sprue, and we're looking at it, and it depends on the manufacturer and all. Some manufacturers wrap their clear parts separately. So some manufacturers are known for having flaws in their canopies. Let's talk a moment about what you can fix and what you can't fix. So you got that canopy off, and you notice a scratch, a surface scratch on either the exterior or interior clear surface. Now, those can be fixed, right?
Correct.
So, as opposed to you look at the canopy and there is a flow mark in the canopy.
Right, which looks like the distortion off of a sidewalk on a hot summer day.
Right.
Yes.
And there is no cure for that.
There is no cure for that.
Because that's inside the plastic. It's not on the surface.
That's a difference in the density within that little area of plastic where you get the abnormal look, if you will. There's not a lot you can do about that. Likewise, sometimes, have you ever seen a canopy that becomes crazed?
Yes. Like it's gotten there was some sort of tension put on it.
Exactly.
And you get like micro cracks.
Yeah, little fibrous looking cracks in it.
Yes. Inside the, through the canopy. It's actually those cracks can be on the inside, the outside,
or through.
But they're actually through
right
to some density in the canopy itself.
When you see those, you've entered a world of pain.
Yes.
So there's not a lot you can really do there. Maybe write the manufacturer and get a replacement canopy. And just as an aside on that real quick, I've had amazingly good luck getting replacement canopies from every manufacturer I have reached out to, including ICM in Ukraine, 2 or 3 years ago. I had a bad Yak 3 canopy and sent them an email, and lo and behold, 2 weeks later, I get not one but 2 replacement canopies. So these companies are way more responsive to this than you might think. So if you end up with a canopy like that where you just can't save it for whatever the reason, reach out to the company. You might be surprised.
Yep. So let's go back. We've got the canopy with the thing you can fix, which is an interior or exterior scratch on the surface of the plastic.
Before we do that, why don't we actually take one step farther back and say that there's absolutely nothing wrong with the canopy whatsoever, and it's actually ready to go on the model. So before
that never happens.
It does every once in a while. You're doing fine molds. You're doing Tamiya.
I'll give you that one.
Yeah. So if you're and the moon is in the third cusp of Jupiter, and you did everything right that day. So yeah,
the goat sacrifice went well.
Exactly. So in that situation, if the canopy is mar free and ready to go, what I'll do is I will first and foremost take a chem wipe. And I will buff the canopy out with a chem wipe for 2 reasons. Number one, it gets all of the finger grease and everything off the canopy. Number 2, it removes any static electricity that plastic has. Now, a chem wipe, I mentioned these I think before on the show. Yeah. Chem wipes are made to wipe microscope objectives, and the last thing you want is a static charge on a microscope objective that will attract dust and ruin images. Right. So if you use a chem wipe dry, it dissipates static electricity. That's what they're designed to do. So I'll buff the canopy out with a dry chem wipe and get rid of all that static electricity. And then I usually dip my canopies, even if they are perfectly mar-free, blemish-free. I will usually dip them in a clear coat for a couple of reasons. One of which is to act as a protectant during the gluing phase, and we're going to get to that later. But so if the canopy is ready to go, you buff it with a chem wipe. If you still have some or can get it, I am a firm believer in future floor wax or pledge with future shine. And I know that's getting difficult to find. I know that they have stopped production of it. If you're sitting on some of that, save it just for your canopies, because I still think that is some of the best stuff you can use is future. Yep. You can also use Alclad Aqua Gloss. Yep. And this works beautifully on clear parts, and you use it just like you do future. And we'll get to dipping the canopy.
Make sure it's aqua gloss, not a regular gloss.
Yeah, not the lacquer base, but the acrylic aqua gloss by Alclad is really good for a canopy dip. The other thing that you can try that I've had good results with is Mission Models gloss. Mm-hmm. And take that and dilute it 1-to-1 with Mission Thinner, because if not, it's way, way too thick right out of the bottle. Right. But if you dilute it 50-50 with Mission Thinner, that too can be used as a really good clear coat for canopies. And one, I'm probably going to get in trouble for this, but I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway. I got a bottle of the AK Gauzy to give a try here at the bench, and I have to say that I dipped 2 different canopies in it, and when dry, they were crystal clear. They were absolutely beautiful. And I tried putting some Tamiya masking tape on there and pulling it off, and it actually left a little distortion on the surface of the Gauzy.
Really?
And I'm going to attribute that to, hey, everybody can get a bad run or whatever. Right. The other thing that's a little alarming about the Gauzy is, at least the way I do canopies, I make use of liquid masking. In particular, Mr. Masking Sol R. And I use that for almost all my masking work for canopies. If you put Masking Sol R onto a Gauzy treated canopy, it turns foggy.
Now, I have actually used, I forget which masking fluid it was. Might have even been an off-brand masking fluid on future dipped canopy, and had that exact same thing happen.
Yes, and it will. However, a combination of future or Pledge with Future Shine, and Masking Sol R works perfectly. It does not go cloudy.
And
And
I
that's
wonder
why.
why.
Yeah, well, it's a good question. One of the reasons is that Masking Sol R has very little ammonia in it. So
Yeah.
that's one reason why it works so well on Pledge with Future or Future. I couldn't tell you, but I've been using that one for 10, 15 years. And I have never had a canopy go foggy with Masking Sol R if pre-dipped in Future or Pledge with Future Shine. I also had the similar results when using Mission Models Gloss, and similar results with Alclad Aqua Gloss.
Yeah.
That said, all these clear coats have to be allowed to dry at least 48 hours.
Yep. I agree. Even though one of the things about Future is that normally one of the beauties of it is it dries very quickly.
Exactly. But it's not, as you know, it's not cured.
Right.
Right. And it's not, it's not UV cross-linked and cured. And that occurs with time and exposure to light. So, let the part sit for at least 48 hours before you start messing with it. And that'll, it's a good investment of your time. So, anyway, back to, so if the canopy is ready to dip, and I'm going to use one of those three, I'll then, before I dip the canopy, if I've been handling the canopy, if I've been, putting a lot of finger oil on it, I will very quickly degrease the canopy with a dip in denatured alcohol and Windex 1:1. Now, denatured alcohol it comes in two kinds. I've talked about this before. Be sure you get the kind that says for cleaning glass.
Not the fuel kind.
Not the fuel kind. It is, again, a world of pain. You don't want to go there. But cleaning glass, and a lot of hardware stores are no longer carrying denatured alcohol. Paint stores do, and for those on the West Coast where it's no longer available in hardware stores, you can get it from Sherwin-Williams.
Yeah,
they have it. So anyway, I'll mix that up with old Windex with ammonia, not vinegar, and mix that 1:1. And that's what I use to remove all the mold release from my sprues or the model prior to building. So I'll soak the canopy in that, get a good degreasing on it, wipe it down with a dry chem wipe. And then when it comes to the dipping, I will find a container that is deep enough that I can put the canopy in there and submerge it.
Mm-hmm.
And then while holding the canopy with a pair of tweezers, I will either use a swab, and these are either microfiber or polyester swabs, and it's literally a little cloth covered swab about the size of your pinky nail that I find useful for all kinds of things on my bench. And another tool that I lifted from my laboratory experience, because these are everywhere in labs. But these swabs are great for applying glue. They're great for buffing clear parts out with polish. So anyway, I will take a swab, and while the canopy is submerged in the clear coat, I will kind of buff the canopy with the swab. If you don't have a swab, you can make do with a Q-tip. And before everybody goes, oh my God, you're going to get, Q-tip fibers on the canopy, I'll take the Q-tip, I'll kind of squeeze it between my fingers and turn it.
Right.
And then I'll just be mindful to be looking for fibers, when I pull the canopy out of the clear coat. But I have never had a canopy ruined by Q-tip fibers.
So now why do you do it while it's submerged?
I'll tell you why.
Step I've never done. So
I'll tell you why. Have you ever dipped a canopy and had the Future bead?
No, I have actually not had that experience, but I have heard of people who have.
I have had that happen to me.
And so what you're doing is just breaking surface tension or whatever.
You got it. It could be a residual mold release or a little finger oil, and it will repel the clear coat, especially if it's an acrylic clear coat that you're using, right? It will repel it. And I can't remember the model now, it was many years ago, but I dipped a canopy in Future, pulled it out, looked great, set it aside to dry, went back and looked, and you could see where it was beaded on one portion, where it didn't flow. It just beaded over that portion of the canopy. It was ruined.
And all you got to do is get burned once. Well, the nice thing about Future, though, is if something goes wrong, you can generally strip it off, correct?
You can set it up in water, alcohol, or even just water, and just let it sit for a long time, and it'll go soft, and you can take it off. Yeah, that's very true.
Jim's probably really good at that.
But what I will do is either with, again, a Q-tip or a swab. I prefer a swab, microfiber swab. I will scrub or buff the inside and the outside aspects of the canopy while it's submerged in the clear coat. And then I will pick the canopy up, again, holding it by the corner of the frame with a pair of tweezers. And I will touch the corner of the canopy to a piece of folded chem wipe. Again, chem wipe because it is lint-free.
Right.
And I'll wick the excess future or clear coat off the canopy, just touching it to the tissue. And then when it starts to look a little dry, I'll dip it again. Then I'll pull it out and wick it a second time. So I'll get 2 coats on there. Okay. Mm-hmm. Then I have a container that's set up, basically an old Tupperware container with a lid that has some holes to get, to allow air through. And I'll set the canopy on a piece of chem wipe folded inside of this Tupperware container, lid it or cover it, and put it on the shelf and not look at it for 3 days. And that's how you dip a canopy. If you're dealing with something like a window where you don't have a frame, you can't set the thing down without having the clear portion touch the tissue, right?
Right.
Get yourself some leaded fishing sinkers.
Yeah, split type or
whatever you got, something big and heavy. You can even use if you've got a large enough container that you're using to dry your parts, you can even use a small paint bottle, model paint. Put that in there so you can lean the part up against the side of that bottle.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
Yeah, so you can touch the corners. Let's say it's a window. It's just a square framed window that you can't lay on its flat side because it'll be ruined.
Right.
I'll touch it to the chem wipe, and then I'll lean it using the frame. I'll lean it up against a little paint bottle inside my container there, cover it, go away for 3 days.
Now that you've talked about this fantasy world in which you get a canopy that is perfect out of the box, let's go back to what really happens, which is you have a canopy and it has an interior or exterior scratch on the surface of the clear part.
See, that never happens to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So if you've got...
you'll respect us in the morning.
Yeah. So I've got this divided into 3 sections: small scratches, deeper scratches, and scratches so deep they hurt when you look at them.
Yeah.
Okay. So starting with small scratches, if you've got little micro scratches on the outside or the inside of the canopy, a lot of times those can be taken care of with just a good buffing with Novus 2 plastic polish. I'm a real believer in Novus 2 and 3 are the 2 that I use the most. Mm-hmm. And again, not to sound like a dead horse, I will either use a Q-tip in small circular motions on using Novus 2 or 3, or I'll use, again, a swab. And the smaller swabs that are, again, about the size of your pinky nail, those are great for getting inside the canopy, as well as a Q-tip for that matter. Mm-hmm. So if it is a sufficiently deep scratch and you need, a fair amount of abrasive, action there to remove it, I'll go with Novus 3 and I'll use a polyester swab, which gives you a bit more bite. If it's less of a scratch, I'll go with Novus 2 and a microfiber swab. Okay. Mm-hmm. So once those scratches are buffed out to the point where you can hold the canopy up to clear plastic and not white light and not see those scratches anymore, at that point you go right back to what we were talking about earlier, which is buff it out with a chem wipe, make sure it looks good, go ahead and degrease it, go ahead and dip it, and you're ready to use the canopy. What if, as I was saying earlier, you don't have scratches that are just little micro scratches? What if you have deep scratches that are not going to be buffable with Novus, 2 or 3?
Well, before we go there, let me ask a question.
Yeah.
Is there a level of scratch the dip will take care of?
Yes, there is. And with experience, you can get to a point where you can look at a canopy and go, that's going to be covered by my clear coat.
Yeah.
All right.
versus that's not going to be covered by my clear coat.
Well, and here's a point on that. If you're not sure, you can go ahead and dip the canopy, and if it doesn't take care of the scratch, you can still go back to step one and start working on the scratch.
Yeah.
You haven't hurt yourself by dipping it.
No, but and in addition to that, remember, dipping will also take, in addition to taking care of scratches, dipping also prepares the canopy for the gluing step in a way that won't fog or craze the canopy.
Right.
So one way or another, whether the canopy is crystal clear or whether it's been buffed out, I always dip it preparatory to gluing.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Second level scratches.
Second level scratches. Before we get to second level scratches, where we're going to be starting to talk about using abrasives, I want to take a little step back here and talk about the abrasive spectrum.
Oh,
yeah. You like that?
I like that. The abrasive spectrum.
The best abrasive spectrum. So I'm going to be calling out abrasives that I have used for umpteen years at my bench. And anybody who knows a little bit about Model Paint Solutions will tell you that 98% of the canopy grew out of my workbench. In other words, if it's on the site, it's on my bench. That's why it's on the site. So when I go through my abrasive spectrum, I'm going to be calling out abrasives that I've used for a long time and the ones that are on my site. That does not mean that you cannot go down to your local hobby shop, your local Lowe's, whatever you have, and come up with a series of abrasives, stringent abrasives, aggressive abrasives down to less aggressive. Come up with a spectrum of these things that works for you, that doesn't necessarily use the same abrasives that I use. But the idea is to have a series of abrasive tools that go from really aggressive to progressively less aggressive to the point where you're just doing just a surface buffing.
Right.
And once you get this spectrum, this series of abrasives worked out, it becomes much easier to deal with scratches because you can look at that scratch and go, well, am I going to have to start with 400 grit? Is it that deep? Or can I get by with starting with 600 grit? Or is it even better? Can I get by with starting with 1,000 grit?
Right. I know that hobby shops sell packets. A lot of this apparently is for auto modelers to polish their finishes. They want that mirror new car finish. So you go into the hobby shop and in a packet, they've got abrasives that start at 1,000 and go 1, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12,
20, 40, 60.
20, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that basically once you get to the upper reaches of those abrasives, the 20, the 40, whatever, it feels like paper.
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
It does not feel like what we would think of as an abrasive.
Exactly right. And those sets of abrasives that you're referring to, those are exactly like the ones that I have on my site.
Yeah.
And they come in, groups. So what I start with, my spectrum going from most aggressive starts with, first off, I'm a firm believer in alpha abrasives. They are synthetic sandpapers.
Yeah.
They are smoother. They work a little different than conventional sandpapers. What I like about them the best is they do what I call less collateral damage.
Right.
If you have a scratch in a plastic and you use conventional sandpaper, you can get rid of the scratch, but you end up putting a lot of smaller scratches around where the scratch was. If you use the right alpha abrasive, you find that they do less of that collateral scratching and just basically take care of, the primary scratch. So anyway, from what Alpha calls their waterproof professional, finishing kit, I'll start with 400 grit, 600 grit, and 1,000 grit. So those are for a deep scratch, I'm going to go with 400. For a less deep scratch, I'm going to start with 600. For even less, I'll start with 1,000. Now, after I get that scratch worked out of the plastic so that there's no more scratch, but now the plastic is all milky
Right.
and not translucent, then I'll switch to the next abrasive in that spectrum, which for me is the sanding films of 10, 15, 20,000.
Mm-hmm.
Or again, along that spectrum, I'll go into micromesh, and I am a huge fan of micromesh.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it is stuck onto a pad or whether you're using it as a sheet. I don't build a model without most of the parts on that kit being touched by micromesh in some way or other. And for working scratches out on canopies, I will go with their 3200 grit, their 3600, their 4000 grit. Those are great grits to get the plastic more translucent after you remove the scratch. After you go through micromesh down to 6,000 grit micromesh, then you'll be set up to go right back to Novus 2 with a polyester or microfiber swab, or Novus 3.
Well, and something I want to emphasize to bring to the attention of what you just said. The initial abrasives, the 400, the 600, the 1,000, those are the ones that are actually taking away plastic so that you are getting rid of the scratch itself, the imperfection in the plastic. Everything past that, what you're attempting to do is restore the clarity.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to invest a little time and come up with your abrasive spectrum. Your tools arranged in most aggressive to least aggressive. So you don't make the mistake of going to an abrasive that is way more aggressive than you need and make way more damage in the plastic than you had to. So yeah, it's exactly right. So the 400, wow, that was embarrassing. The 400, the 600, the 1,000, the 400 and the 600, that's for getting rid of the scratches. Past 600 grit, we start getting into 1,000. We start getting into micromesh of 32, 36, 4,000. That's where you're polishing the plastic back to translucency. And then once you get it to that point, you can go right back to what we were saying earlier. Now you no longer have a deep scratch. Now you have a less deep scratch. So you can go right back to your Novus 3, your Novus 2, your Chem Wipe, your degreasing, and then you're dipping in a clear coat.
And now you're back to that mythical perfect canopy that came out of the box without any problems.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And if you move on to, the next one, which would be scratches so hard scratches so hard it hurts to look at them. There you're going to be resigned to probably going all the way down to 400 grit. And that's what I use, Alpha Abrasives 400 grit. Again, it's synthetic, so it doesn't do as much collateral damage, but it is still a very aggressive sandpaper. And that 400 grit is about as aggressive as I will use on a clear plastic part in order to remove a scratch.
Right. And just simply because if it's an awful scratch, if you use something higher than, by higher, I mean a number less than 400, you're just putting so many new scratches into the plastic that you're better off using the 400 and taking more time to get rid of that deep, deep scratch than going to 320 or 200 where you're just going to, you're creating as many
the
problems
frame off of it.
Right. You're creating more problems than you're fixing.
Completely.
But, I think something a lot of people, they're afraid to sand a clear part.
Yeah, it's hard to do.
And I understand it because, it's one of those things that when you first put that abrasive, I don't want to say sandpaper, once you first put that abrasive, that 400 to the canopy and you sand on it, your first look is, oh my God, I've screwed this up and ruined it. But
yes.
99.9% of the times you haven't. There's nothing that you can't fix in that regard if it is indeed a surface scratch.
Exactly. Exactly. And with time, the other thing is when you're trying to determine how bad the scratch is, having a really good light and most importantly, good magnification is key. Because you can oftentimes, under good magnification, determine whether the scratch is on the outer face or the inner face of the canopy.
And that's
right?
something important to know before you start sanding things.
It sure is. And let's not forget the most difficult scratch to remove is, let's use just a hypothetical example. P40 Warhawk, let's make it 72nd scale so it's small, and you have a deep scratch inside the curved portion.
Oh, you are a cruel man.
Yeah, and that's where that's what separates the modelers from the non-modelers at that point, right?
Yeah,
that's probably the hardest one to deal with. And there, you can use the same spectrum of abrasives. What you may end up doing is folding those abrasives into small 1-inch square sheets, and then doubling those over to get half round shapes that you can work into the top of that canopy and work that scratch out. But with enough patience, you can buff practically any scratch out, even the one on the inside of the canopy.
Now, when you are using your abrasive spectrum, you are always using water, correct?
Almost always. The only time I don't use not only water, but soapy water. And that's really important because the soap really does add a lot to decreasing the friction and just giving you a smoother finish, whatever you're using. The synthetic papers that Alpha make really love to be used wet. I mean, that's how they're best used.
That's right. That's their point.
Yeah. So, but with regards to how I make my water up, just imagine your average coffee mug, volume of water. I'll probably put 10 or 12 good sized drops of liquid detergent, dishwashing detergent in that. That's a lot of soap.
Yeah.
I use a lot of soap, and because I want things lubricated, I don't want to be making more micro scratches that are going to show up, especially if we're working on a Mustang that's destined to be natural metal. Let's pull out all the nightmares, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, anyway, that's a good point. All of the steps here, except that final step with a chem wipe to remove static electricity, all of these steps are done with soapy cold water.
Right. Now, you've got us to the point where we have a crystal clear, beautiful canopy that's been dipped in future and shines. It looks like you've gone to Zales with your fiance, and you've got the jewel. The guy who's trying to sell puts that rock under that light, and it just explodes into. So you've got that canopy. We're there.
Okay.
Now we have to actually mask it and paint it.
So I want to only touch on masking because that is a topic in and of itself.
All right.
Masking canopies. And
this is how he gets himself back on the show all the time.
Yeah, I know.
It's true. It's true. You figured that out.
Yeah.
So if you go to my site, I did 3 articles on masking canopies. Any canopy fetishist should be worth 3 articles on masking canopies.
Well, and that's funny. Before you came on, I was talking with Mike, and believe it or not, there is actually show prep that is sometimes done for the show. I went to YouTube, nearly every modeling channel, and there are tons of modeling channels on YouTube.
Yeah, there are.
Nearly everyone has a canopy and canopy masking feature.
Yes.
Because it is so important.
Yes. It's critical.
Okay.
It's
so
critical.
we'll have you back for masking, but go ahead and say what you were going to say.
Yeah, so it's absolutely critical. It's a shame to put all your time into removing scratches, buffing and dipping the canopy, and then, to screw up masking it. I mean, it's a critical skill.
But you have articles.
I've got 3 different articles, and I try to divide it into different types of canopies. The most dreaded canopy, like a T6 or a Hawker Hurricane.
The greenhouse.
Yes, the bird cage canopy, a greenhouse canopy. Those can be a challenge. Some people will say greenhouse canopies with rounded corners.
Yes.
Those can be a nightmare. So I try to divide that up into, three different canopy styles, if you will, and the approaches I use to mask them. But in short, one of the things I don't do is I don't take a blade ever to a clear piece of plastic.
Gotcha.
What I mean to say by that is some guys, using Tamiya masking tape or
bare metal foil.
bare metal foil or parafilm or whatever they're doing, they'll put that on the canopy, and then they will take an X-Acto blade and
use the frame as a guide.
And use the frame as a guide. And number one, I'm not that good with a blade. I've said that before. That's kind of like a weakness of mine as a builder. I'm not a good bladesman.
Well, you need a Remington microscreen then.
Probably, yeah. And the other thing is,
thank you for the shaving reference, Mike. That was great. Nobody under the age of 50 got that joke, but you and I got it.
The other thing is, and I don't know if this ever happened to you, but when I was a wee baby modeler and cutting, masking tape on canopy frames, I would occasionally have the clear coat crack where I put the blade.
Wow.
And it usually happened in those areas of the canopy where you have a little 90-degree, angle, and the clear coat has wicked and made a rounded fillet.
Yes.
Right there, and it's
I know
thick.
exactly what you're telling. Micro thicker than the rest of the application.
Just thick enough that if you hit it with the tip of an X-Acto, it'll crack.
Yeah.
And that's happened to me way too many times. So anyway, I don't put a blade to canopy ever. What I will do is I will take very small strips of masking tape, and you can, start with Tamiya tape and a straight edge, and, cut yourself some strips that are 1 millimeter wide. That's it.
Yep.
1 millimeter. Or, as chance would have it, on Model Paint Solutions, I carry Azu masking tapes from Japan, which are beautifully cut, super thin, 0.4 millimeter.
I have them all.
That's not. Yeah, that wasn't a typo or a mispronunciation. 0.4, 0.7 millimeters wide. So I will usually go with something super thin like that. And what I'll do is I'll take that super thin tape and I will tape think of it in your mind's eye, a square window with a square frame. I will use that tape and just mask off the inner periphery of the clear portion.
Right.
It'll just be a square, right?
Right.
And then once that's laid down and embossed with an embosser, and I'm a firm believer in using an embosser anytime you use masking tape.
Right. When you say embosser, you're talking about what in the old graphic design world was called a burnisher, when you put down Letraset tape or Letraset letters, and then you burnish over it to make it flat. It's kind of a ball, or sometimes they're spoon shaped.
Or a stylus, as they're called.
Or stylus, yeah.
Yeah, so we're dating ourselves because we both went to graduate school and used those kinds of letters for posters, right?
Yeah. John, next time we're both at the Nationals together, you and I are going to have a conversation about Letraset letters and all of that stuff.
Yes. Yeah.
And I'll tell you why I know all of that.
That's exactly right. I mean, that's exactly the burnishing tool that I'm referring to. I've got a couple of different versions on my site. I'm a firm believer in them. This is how you make sure that you don't get paint wicking under your masking tape if you take time to burnish it down. Mm-hmm. And for those who don't know, a burnishing tool, imagine a BB, just about the size of a BB, and you put that, on the end of a metal stalk with a handle. And you can get that little BB right down on, it's got a smooth surface so it doesn't scratch or grab the tape. And you can emboss the tape down onto the plastic and seal it so it doesn't, paint won't wick under it. So once I tape my frame off, just the periphery of the clear portion with my Azu tape, then I'll go back in there and that's when I'll switch to masking Sol R. and I'll take a brush full of that, and I'll put that in the middle of the mast framed area, if you will, and simply paint that clear area with masking Sol R right up to the masking tapes and let that dry.
Now, will you agree with me that the greatest invention of the 21st century was not the iPhone? It was not the personal computer. It was, however, pre-cut masks.
Well, it certainly wasn't the cell phone. Let me just say that. But I'd have to agree with you, and I should have prefaced that. If there is a set of Edouard die-cut masks, or there's so many companies that make them now. Yeah. If you can get that for the kit you're working on, oh my gosh, go that route. That's the way to go.
Right. But there are plenty of kits where that is not available.
Exactly.
And if you want to build it, what you just described is the way to, in essence, create your own pre-cut mask effect.
Exactly. This is a way that you can mask with masking tape. And again, masking Sol R, if you like, that technique, and never have to put a blade onto your canopy and run the risk of scratching the canopy, which I always seem to do. So let's take one step back and go back to that frame canopy, that frame window, and instead of having square corners, let's make it like an F6F Hellcat and give it rounded corners.
Oh, because that's always so much better.
It's really easy to deal with, though. And on the site, on my site, I have 3 different sheets of die-cut circles.
Oh, I know the ones you're talking about.
And some of them are only a millimeter in diameter. These are tiny little die-cut circles. It is very easy to find a circle on one of these 3 sheets that will
fits
fit
the radius.
Yeah. Exactly. That will fit perfectly into that radius. So you take 4 dots, you basically mask each rounded corner with a circle, and then go back to your thin azu, connect those dots with a thin piece of azu, and now you have basically framed out your window that you can now fill in with masking Sol R and be done with it.
Well, that is so much better than either putting bare metal foil or big sheets of Tamiya tape and putting a blade in, no matter how sharp, and trying to keep it up against the molded frame. Because again, the modeling companies are getting better and better and more delicate in the molding of their surface features, and that comes to canopies as well.
Yes.
And in the old days, let's face it, the Frog or the Airfix frame was so thick that it was a pretty good guide. There wasn't a lot of wandering that was going to happen because the frame itself was so thick that it was easy to keep the blade up against it.
Yeah, try that with fine molds.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was going to say. Try that with fine molds or an Arma kit.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Where the frame step is microscopic. There is almost nothing to rest your blade up against and follow.
But it is easy to use that same frame step.
Right.
And push a piece of micro tape right parallel with it.
Because the worst that happens, the tape doesn't lay correctly. You can see it right away, and you can pull it up and put down another piece
and readjust it. Exactly right. The other thing, real quick, I'll say on this is a couple more quick tricks on this. If you try masking a canopy like this with thin strips and let's say dots in the corners, it really helps to immobilize the canopy on a building board, because you do need 2 hands.
Yeah.
So what I'll do is I'll take a piece of putty, a big wad of putty, and I'll shove that into the if you will, let's say we're doing a Spitfire, the rear sliding portion of a Spitfire canopy, right?
Gotcha.
So I'll take a piece of putty, Mark 22. I'll take a piece of putty, I'll shove that into the canopy, and then I'll use that to affix it onto a building board. Then when I go to put my little dots on my little azu tape, I have the tape in forceps in my right hand, and I have a toothpick or something in my left hand that I use to direct the tape to where I want it on the canopy when I let it go of the tweezers.
Yeah, and to pin it down.
And to pin it down.
The anchor point at one end.
Exactly. It is so difficult to do that if you're holding the canopy with one hand and trying to do what is a two-handed, trick with the other hand. So, I should have said this earlier. Trick number one: immobilize the canopy onto a piece of work board so that you have both hands when you do the masking. So that's the first thing. And then, again, secondly to that, after the canopy is entirely masked, or I should say the frames are delineated, go with your masking Sol-R, let that dry at least 24 hours, let the masking Sol cure. And last thing is, when you go to paint it, we're jumping all the way into paint real quick here. When you go to paint that canopy, let's say it's a T6, we know with the birdcage canopy, try not to shoot a wet coat over your mast canopy or your mast car parts, your window parts. Try to use just a light dry coat over those mast areas.
Begs a question, and we're going to have you back for masking canopies, the masking part in full. There's a long discussion. Do you, before you shoot either the interior frame color, do you shoot a clear coat to seal the edges, like a very mist coat of future or whatever your clear is, to seal the edges before you start applying paint?
Never.
See, I do if you're using pre-cut masks, as opposed to what you've just described where you're making your own.
Yeah, I've used both, and I've never used that kind of a clear coat seal, if you will, in large part because my concern is that you don't want
step.
Yeah, well, you don't want something cured where you're going to be pulling a tape.
Yeah,
because that's going to lead to little nicks and little gouges where that's cured clear coat that's going to be ripped, right?
Right.
So I mean, if it works for you, that's awesome. I've never done it because I shouldn't say that. I did try it, years ago, and that's what I got is the little gouges when I pulled my tape. So maybe I put my clear on too thick, but anyway.
Yeah.
I know I don't though. I don't.
So let's go to the question Mike asked, because I think this is an important one. Do you put the canopy on the model before you mask and paint it, or do you put the canopy on the model after you've masked and painted? And I've got an answer for this, and I'm interested to see if it lines up with yours.
Both.
I was going to say it depends.
It depends, because there's so many variables out there. I will tell you my preference. My preference is always to mask the canopy off the model.
Right.
That way I have better access to it. And if I screw it up, I have better access to fix the screw up.
Right. Now, let's say you've always masked it off the model. Before you paint it, do you attach it to the model or not?
I like to do a lot of my models open canopy.
Yeah.
So the answer to that is no. I usually, because I'm going to pose it open, right? So I will usually paint them separate and then glue the canopy posed.
Okay.
If it's going to be a closed canopy model, I will mask first, then I will glue the canopy in place, then I will paint.
Gotcha. And I think in general that's true. I think the key in all of that for me is always to test fit the canopy with the assembled model.
Yes.
And see what you're dealing with.
Yep.
Because I think if it's one of the, let's say it's a fine molds kit or Tamiya kit, and you drop that canopy down and it fits so perfectly, it looks like it was molded as part of the fuselage piece.
Right.
That's a model where you can keep the canopy off, paint the canopy separately, drop it on at the end, and you'll never know the difference. Whereas a lot of models don't fit quite that way.
Right.
at which point you need to put the canopy on and fill or adjust or fiddle. And that's a situation where you might want to consider putting the canopy on before you paint it.
Right. And another thing to consider is if you're going to put the canopy on, let's say before you paint, okay. One of the things you're going to want to do is fire up the compressor, and if you've got a little miniature blowgun, Harder Steenbeck has these great little blowguns that I love. I keep one hooked up next to my bench all the time. You can also use an airbrush with a small tip on it. Blow the cockpit out.
Right.
Turn the model upside down, shake it really hard, flick it with your fingers a couple of times, and then blow every little nook and cranny in the cockpit out to get all of the little dust and stuff out of the cockpit before you put your canopy on top.
Because we've all been there, right?
We've all been there, right?
You peel the masking off,
right,
and the canopy's glued onto the model. You peel the masking off, and you're like, what the hell is that?
And then you do the how many have done this? Then you end up trying to flick the canopy with your fingernail to knock the dust particle off the canopy back into the cockpit so you won't see it.
Yep.
Okay.
Been there, done that, have the t-shirt.
So this is one more reason to buff the canopy out with a chem wipe earlier in the process. Think about it. A lot of that dust is sticking to the inside of the canopy because you buffed it, you sanded it. It has all this charge, has a static charge, and it's going to attract dust. And I will say this emphatically. When I started buffing my canopies out with a chem wipe dry to remove static electricity during the building process, that dust sticking to the inside of my canopy went away.
Yeah.
So
I think that people do not appreciate the static electricity that styrene builds up.
Yep.
Just from normal handling.
Exactly. So here's one more. Let's take one more step back. Let's again applicable to aircraft or cars. Let's say you're going to do a model. Let's say so ME109, and you're going to do it closed canopy. Okay. So one of the things you're going to want to think about is when you're building that kit, before you put the fuselage halves together, you may want to think about taking a putty worm, right? Everybody knows what a putty worm is.
It's at the bottom of a tequila bottle, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So you roll the poster putty out until you get a worm, and
right.
What I do is, let's say you have the typical cockpit tub that glues into the right side of the fuselage.
Right.
I'll take a putty worm and I'll seal all the little nooks and crannies in between the tub and the side of the fuselage underneath the tub, right? Where you won't see the putty worm.
Right.
And then I'll put another putty worm on the tub so that when the fuselage halves are closed, that one on the other side of the tub gets crushed in place, sealing the tub off. With the idea being that if you seal the tub from the inside, all the little vents and holes and openings in the fuselage, they're going to let dust and sanding debris into the fuselage. Won't matter because the cockpit tub will be sealed off.
Gotcha.
Right. You can also apply that to all those vents and holes and louvers on the airframe. If you can get a piece of tape, you can tape that off from the inside. You can always take a Sharpie and paint the sticky portion of the tape black, and then put that on the inside of the fuselage, covering the vent or the hole to lessen the chance down the road in the building process of introducing debris and dust inside the fuselage or the car body that will work its way onto the inside of your windows.
Yeah, let's face it, you're doing a lot of sanding. Even with the best model,
Yep.
You're doing sanding, and what sanding creates is
dust.
Little particles of dust.
Yep. So I will seal the cockpit tub in place with putty worms. I will seal vents and holes and louvers with putty worms. You can also, by the way, that putty also will take Sharpie ink. So you can actually, paint that putty black and then stick it on the inside of the model to, block off louvers and holes. So that's one step I do on a kit, whatever the kit is, as just one way of lessening the chance down the road of having dust and debris work its way onto the inside of the plastic parts, thereby ruining them. Right?
Yep.
So. Okay, so now let's actually, if you want to, we can segue into actually gluing the part onto the model.
That's exactly what I was gonna say. Congratulations, you're exactly where I thought we'd be. So we've got this beautiful canopy. It is beautifully masked. It is either painted if we painted it off, or we're going to attach it before we paint it. Either way, we have a clear part that is made from one type of styrene. We want to attach it to a model that is another type of styrene. How do we do it?
Bob Smith Gold Orderless CA.
Okay.
I've been using that stuff for years. And I don't like using Tamiya thin cement to put canopies on because it's so easy to lose control of.
Right. If it wicks someplace you didn't intend it.
Yep. Again, world of pain. Also, that is a pretty hot cement that will craze or fog canopies really easily.
Gotcha.
And I've done that too many times myself.
Now, keep in mind, a lot of regular CAs will fog a canopy. So you're talking about something specific.
You beat me to it. Most, if not all, CAs will fog or craze clear plastic without a doubt. But here's the deal. If you have dipped your canopy in a clear coat first, whether it's Mission, Alclad, or preferably, Future, or Pledge.
Right.
If you glue that dipped canopy in place with gold odorless CA glue, you will get no crazing or fogging whatsoever.
Now, this is the gold label Bob's. Explain to everybody what Bob Smith is.
So Bob Smith is, this dude, Bob Smith, that makes this, most of the CA glues that you see in hobby shops. If you look, it may have the hobby shop's name on the glue bottle. But if you look, either under that label or somewhere on the bottle, you'll see Bob Smith Industries.
Right. And what he does is he sells to hobby shops and he lets them brand the glue with their particular hobby shop name.
Exactly. And he makes he makes the thin, the thick, whatever, gap filling. And what I like to use is the gold odorless thick, CA glue. And it is CA. It doesn't have quite as much bite as does the normal CA because I use them side by side when I'm building.
So it doesn't dry as quickly or anything like that?
It dries about the same. It just seems a little less structural in that it has a little less bite. Okay. But it has more than enough, structural integrity to hold a canopy in place, which isn't structural, right?
Right.
So it's not load bearing. So yeah. And the other reason I like the CA glue, the thick, is because you put it where you want it. You don't have to worry about it running or wicking. And that's a big fear of mine when I'm putting a canopy on, especially if I'm posing the canopy open. I want to have just a few daubs of glue exactly where I need them to hold that canopy in place and not worry about glue wicking. So anyway, the combination of Bob Smith Gold CA on a clear coat dipped canopy will give you a 99.9% chance of getting that canopy glued in place without any fogging or crazing. That's the secret.
Now, you don't use glue and glaze or ultra glue or any of the white glue products.
I don't. I will occasionally, if I am backed into a corner where I, for some reason or other, I didn't get a clear coat on the canopy, or it's just a difficult, fit, I will resort to, what do you call that? Gator glue?
Right.
The basically refined white glue is all it is.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of white glue because, as you know, it's not even close to structural.
Right.
And you can usually pull the part right off, if it's glued on with white glue. I usually glue all of my canopies on with Bob Smith Gold CA.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you've got the canopy on there. It's on. You've got it glued beautifully. And you're looking at the edge where the canopy meets the fuselage.
Yep.
And there's a spot where it doesn't look quite right.
There's a gap.
There's a gap.
Okay.
So what do you do to solve that problem?
So you got a couple of options there. If it's a small gap that you're not going to have to scribe through.
Yeah.
Right. So let's say, it's a little gap on top of where the hinge line is. Right.
Exactly.
You can actually get by with some of these acrylic putties.
Like the Vallejo putty, which is marble dust.
Exactly. Yeah. And you can just put a little bit of that on the end of a moist toothpick and trowel that into the gap. Let that dry, and as long as it's not too big of a gap, because it does shrink a little bit. You do lose a little volume, but as long as it's not a big gap, that's what I use.
Okay.
And that works really, really well. Here's one for you. You're going to love this. If you've not painted the model, you've glued the canopy on, you see this gap, go to Mr. Surfacer 500 or 1000.
Mm-hmm.
Fill the gap in with Mr. Surfacer 500 or 1000.
Very delicately.
And then wait for that to dry really well. This is key. Don't start too early. Let it go overnight so it's completely dry. Then grab yourself some Gunze leveling thinner.
Right. Or denatured alcohol will do the same thing here.
So you know where I'm going, so why don't you finish?
Exactly. With either
because he's not the guest.
Yeah, thank you. Denatured alcohol or Gunze thinner actually, like on a Q-tip or one of those swabs, pads, whatever.
Yep.
Soaked in denatured alcohol or Gunze thinner and then squeezed out so it's not too wet.
Right.
And you wipe/scrub along that line. It will take everything above the gap, the extra, quote unquote, extra Mr. Surfacer right off.
Exactly.
Mike actually gave me a tip. Glass cleaning, eyeglass cleaning cloths.
Yeah.
You tend to accumulate them. You can use those for that exact same thing. Wet it. Squeeze out, and if it's a flat surface that you can just rub your finger over.
Oh yeah, I love those things.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I like that.
Yeah,
that's great. Well, that's what I would use. I mean, if it's a gap that you can get on with a Q-tip and a little Gunze. By the way, before we end, remind me to tell you how to improve a Gunze leveling thinner. What do you guys call it?
Wait a minute. Unicorn tears? There is an
unicorn
improvement
tears.
to you.
Oh,
okay.
There is.
This is breaking. There is breaking news here and now, gentlemen. We're not going to go past this.
And I'll tell you. And I'll tell you next time. Good night.
How damn you? How can you possibly improve on the single greatest modeling product ever made?
Dr. S has left the building.
Buy it by the liter.
Yeah. Well, other than buy by the liter, which they currently don't sell.
So, are we done with filling the gap?
We filled the gap. We've given the people. This is breaking news.
Let's finish just real quick.
All
right. If the gap has to be scribed through. So let's say you have a gap in the canopy and the canopy hinge line goes right through that gap. And when you fill the gap, it's going to leave this blob, right?
Right.
In that case, I bite the bullet and I go back to my Gunze Surfacer, usually 500 or 1000. I'll fill that gap in. I'll let it dry. I'll protect the canopy with tape or scribing tape. I'll knock that down ever so carefully using the edge of a folded piece of 600 or 1000 alpha abrasive, and then rescribe it. I mean, there's no magic there other than having good light and magnification when you're sanding down the little bleb. Outside of that, that's the only trick.
Well, and when you're rescribing through Mr. Surfacer 500 or 1000, sharp blade and light touch.
Yes,
because it is
soft.
More delicate than styrene plastic.
Yeah, and when you go to restore that scribed hinge line through what you filled, same rule applies there. Ever so gentle when you scribe through the putty, or you'll gouge it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now let's get back to this breaking news. I am amazed that unicorn tears can be improved. How?
Where'd you hear that?
You just told me that.
I told you. Next show. Okay. All right. So I am working on a Tamiya 148 scale Yag Tiger.
Okay.
Good,
good vehicle, good kit.
Yeah. It's a beautiful kit, and I'm trying to do more armor, and I'm doing the ambush scheme, tricolor ambush scheme. So I'm doing a lot of fine line, and I'm sitting there in my shop, and I just put the heater on to take the chill off because it's cold up in Seattle these days. And so
it's cold in Louisville too.
Yeah. And so it was arid in the room there where I was working, and I'm shooting AK real colors, diluted to about 30% with Gunze leveling thinner. And I'm just kind of having to deal with a little bit of tip dry, because it's such a dry, arid day. So bottom line is, what I did was I took some of the Tamiya mild paint retarder. Comes in a square bottle with an orange cap on it. If you can't find some, as chance would have it, I'll have it on the site next week.
You're good, man.
You like that? Was that smooth or what?
That was smooth as silk.
You like that? Yeah, I slid that one in there.
There you go.
I've been sitting on this stuff for too long. Like, I've got too many things I need to launch on the site. And after I did this little trick, I'm committed to launching it next week. Anyway, bottom line is, if you take that Tamiya mild paint retarder and add it to Gunze leveling thinner to about 10% by volume, and I mixed up some Gunze leveling with that, added ahead of time, and a pharmaceutical bottle. And then I went back and diluted my AK to 30% in that, diluent. The tip dry went away. There was no tip dry, none whatsoever. The lines became thinner and easier to shoot. The overspray became less. It went from an enjoyable experience, because AK shoots so nice in Gunze.
Yes.
It went from an enjoyable experience to I don't know how. Yeah, it was. I was changed.
Angels were singing.
They truly were.
Do you attribute that to the arid condition?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And and I write about this a fair amount in various articles. The effect of humidity on painting, especially if you're shooting acrylics, as you both know. Acrylics are horrendously sensitive to the hydration,
right,
state.
Because of their carrier.
Exactly, because it's water. But you know what? Lacquers are also sensitive to increased drying rates when it's arid outside,
because they evaporate so quickly.
Exactly. So when you add some of that Tamiya mild retarder to 10%,
Dave's a chemist now.
to 10% by volume into the leveling thinner, it goes from just a good thinner to one that literally, I'm shooting fine lines. I'm not wiping the tip like I normally do every 2 or 3 minutes, no matter what I'm shooting. I'm not having to wipe it every 2 or 3 minutes because there's literally no paint sticking to the needle.
Okay, so I have to ask you one question. Do you carry the Mr. Masking Saw R too?
I do.
then you're going to be getting an order from me. All right. See, I'm convinced that he comes on and he does this
Not to take your money,
not for the wider audience, just because he knows he's going to get some of my money every single time.
Well, you're shooting an infinity, aren't you, David?
I'm shooting an infinity.
Yeah, you need to add an evolution to that.
Oh God, listen. I have 4 airbrushes now. Don't do this to me, man.
he's only got 2 hands.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, that's the secret. Like I said, if you can't find the Tamiya Mild, I'm going to have it on the site. I'm actually adding a whole new page to the site next week called Lacquer Paint Reagents. And I've got Gunze Leveling Thinner in stock, and that's going to go up. Yep.
Because that sometimes gets real hard to find.
Yep.
Our local hobby shop here, you walk in sometimes and it's like the Unicorn Tears ferry arrived, but of course everybody's been waiting for it, and so it disappears overnight, and then Japanese dock workers strike for the next 9 months, and you never see it again.
Yeah, which is why when my distributor got a couple of distributors when he had the Gunze leveling in stock, I stocked up on a bunch of it. And so I'm sitting on a lot of it. And I've got also the Tamiya retarder in stock as well. And both of those are going to be launched on the new Lacquer Paints Reagent page next week. So hold your order till then, David, and I'll put some mild retarder in there for you so you'll be ready to go.
See, that meme from Futurama where it's shut up and take my money? That's what you're going to get. Shut up and take my money.
All right.
All right. So did we fail to cover anything you had in your copious notes?
We covered everything in the notes, and maybe a few things that weren't in the notes. So I think we did at least I got the basics across today, I think.
Yeah. Well, we're definitely having you again. You don't have to you don't have to tease things. We're going to have you back anyway, but we are now definitely going to have you back for more on masking the canopy.
Well, John, thanks for joining us again. We'll get you back on here soon, and we'll learn something else.
And we very much appreciate all of your information, man. Like I said, every time I learn something new.
I appreciate that, guys. Well, happy modeling to you.
Same to you. Getting the right size base for your model, diorama, or vignette can be difficult and time-consuming. Bases by Bill has the solution with their all-new custom-size display bases. Offering sizes of 4 to 30 inches and any size in between, you choose the dimensions you want and you get the size you need every time. They can also be laser engraved with a unit emblem or custom text of your choice. In addition, shipping is always included within the lower 48 states. Built by modelers for modelers, Bases by Bill has bases and display cases for any type of model and for any size. Visit their website at basesbybill.com to see their new products or to get your own custom-built base or display case quote. Use the code MOJO at checkout to apply a 10% listener discount to your order. That code again is MOJO for 10% off. Bases by Bill for all your model display needs.
We're almost at the end of the episode. Modeling fluids are down toward the bottom of the glass. So how was your new bourbon? I'm interested to hear.
This is good. Now, I went to a small independent store and got this, so the price point was not bad, but a little higher than my Bullet. So I got to think what it might be if I went and bought it at a big box store.
Right.
But even at the price I paid, this is really excellent. It's a 10-year, so the flavor, there's a lot of vanilla in this, a lot of nuttiness. It's really, really good. And
now, what's the ABV?
90. It's 90 proof.
Okay.
So for a 10-year, it's been cut back a little bit.
Yes.
But I think they got it right.
Well, good. I'll have to look for that. I don't recognize that name.
It's affordable and it's really good. I recommend it a lot.
Well, believe it or not, Trader Joe's Kentucky bourbon. Again, now it's just like yours. It's 90 proof. I do not know how long it's been aged, but given the very light color, My bet is 4 years. It's not Buffalo Trace. It's not, it's not high end. Again, I had some previously just as a shot, just to get a straight taste of it. Like a lot of young bourbons, you get the heat up front. Now, I will tell you, there wasn't a bad aftertaste. There wasn't a lot of complexity to it because, again, it's really young. But if you're going to use it as a mixer in an old fashioned, a Manhattan, or in my case, a highball, Trader Joe's all across the country should be easy for a lot of people to find. Snatch yourself up a bottle. Now, again, the model wife works there, so I get the discount. It costs me about $11, $12. It only costs, straight off the shelf retail, like $15.99. It's well worth drinking at $15.99, especially if you're using it as a mixer. So again, we've got 2 recommendeds on this episode.
That's right. We got Trader Joe's and Russell's Reserve 10-year.
Perfect.
Go get some.
You got it. So, Mike, we're almost to the end here. Do you have a shout out?
I do. We got to get back on track, Dave. We got to shout out our contributors who make this show possible.
Yes, they are very, very important to the continued success of this endeavor.
Well, between our Patreon and our PayPal contributors, we've got Joe Porche, Matt Schaefer, Mike Hegarty, and Joe Paisano. All 4 of these gentlemen have chosen to contribute to Plastic Model Mojo either via Patreon or PayPal. If you'd like to make a recurring contribution to Plastic Model Mojo, you can do so by going to www.patreon.com/plasticmodelmojo, and there you can make a recurring contribution from any amount from $1 on up, and they'll handle the monthly billing for that, and we really appreciate that. If you'd like to manage your own recurring contribution or make a one-time donation or contribution to Plastic Model Mojo, you can go to www.plasticmodelmojo.com. In the upper right corner of the web page, you'll find a heart icon that will take you directly to our PayPal link. And there you can donate however you feel. And folks, we really appreciate this. It's helped us move to a new recording platform, buy equipment, whatever, over the last 2.5 years. And most appreciated. You guys make it happen for us. So thank you very much.
And not to bring us down, but my shout out here, as Mike mentioned earlier, the Commemorative Air Force experienced a tragic loss this weekend. 6 people apparently passed, and 2 vintage aircraft, a B-17 and a B-63 or P-63, were lost. Shocking to all of us. I know that when I saw the videos, it was like a gut punch. I talked to Jim, who was there, and he was very affected by it. I mean, seeing it in person was a shock. Jim is fairly active in the community of warbirds, and so he's familiar with a lot of those people. And being there when it happened really shook him. I know from talking to him today, one thing he was very grateful for was the number of people who in the modeling community, many of whom were only familiar with him because they'd either seen his YouTube videos or had heard him on our podcasts or one of the other podcasts, who reached out to him to A, make sure that physically he was okay, but B, to offer their support in what clearly was a situation that by seeing it, it's a rough experience. And he expressed to me when I talked to him this morning how grateful he was. He did not realize he had so many people, for want of a better word, cared about him. And he was grateful to all of you. So thank all of you for reaching out and giving him that support. Again, it just goes to reinforce this is a really, really great community. And I couldn't ask for a better group of guys.
Well, Dave, we're getting close to the end of this thing.
Yeah.
And we want to wish all our listeners here in the United States a happy and safe Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And I think we want to say so many kits.
So little time. See you soon, Mike.
All right, man. Well, you have a good Thanksgiving too, Dave.
You too.
All right.